11 burns in Abuja restaurant gas explosion. Senate approves INEC budget for 2019 general election. In international news, magnitude 6.3 earthquake struck out of Kure Island off eastern Russia as U.S. pummeled by Hurricane Michael. And in sport, Kano Pillars to face Enugu Rangers in the final of the 2018 ITO Federation Cup.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Sadly, 11 people on Wednesday suffered varying degrees of burns from a gas explosion at a restaurant. The victims were immediately taken to our Sokorong General Hospital. Some had suffered up to 50 degrees of burns. A pregnant woman who works at the restaurant said they were all going about their normal businesses when the gas suddenly exploded. Another worker says the fire started from the back of the restaurant where one of the cylinders was stationed. She said the gas was ignited inside the restaurant by the gas cylinder outside. Finally, the Senate has approved the budgetary allocation of 189 billion naira to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for next year's general election. Chairman Senate Committee on Appropriations, Senator Danjuma Goje, announced this yesterday during a meeting on the submission of harmonized report of INEC 2019 general elections supplementary budget estimates. A High Court of the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja has nullified People's Democratic Party's dismissal of Buruji Kashamu Ogo East Senator and the party state chairman Adebayo Dayo. Kashamu had argued against his dismissal from the party. Justice Valentine Ashi held that Kashamu's expulsion was unlawful because it was done in flagrant disobedience of a subsisting order of the court made in December last year and restated in January. The court has also directed parties not to do anything to jeopardize the hearing of the pending case. A High Court in Port Harcourt has nullified the Congress' and primary election that produced Dele Cole as the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress. The court also declared illegal and nullified the Rivers State APC Senatorial, House of Representatives and House of Assembly primaries. The High Court has also cancelled all the elections of Rivers APC ward executives, local government executives and state executives committee that arose from the ward congresses. In what appears a first major electoral loss towards the 2019 general elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has banned the All Progressives Congress, APC, from fielding candidates for governorship, state and federal legislative elections in Zamfara State. INEC says APC has failed to reach a common ground on the conduct of party primaries before INEC's October 7th deadline. This might sound tough, but it seems necessary. President Muhammadu Buhari has signed a new executive order to tighten regulations against money laundering and tax evasion. The new order requires Nigerian taxpayers who hold offshore assets and incomes to voluntarily declare those assets and pay taxes on them within 12 months. The order says taxpayers who truthfully and voluntarily comply with the conditions of the scheme would pay a one-time levy of 35% and shall obtain immunity from prosecution for tax offences and offences related to offshore assets and many others. Hundreds of passengers who had an early morning flight at Lagos Domestic and International Airport were stranded as aviation unions barricaded entrances to the terminals. Airlines are also counting their losses as union members refused all pleas to open the entry and exit gate of the terminals. This is coming despite a court order obtained by operators of the terminals to stop the unions from disrupting operations. The union are protesting against what they say is the unlawful disengagement of some of their colleagues.
Our members and workers of Bicotany are unjustly victimized because of their decision to join unions of their choices, as guaranteed by Section 40 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The only conditions by which this issue can be sorted out is freedom to unionize, then reinstatement of those who have been sacked on the basis of their joining the unions.
500 rice farms at Okpotuwari and Ondewere community in southern Ijaw local government area of Bayelsa State have been submerged by flood. Chairman Rice Farmers Association in the state, Ezekiel Ogbianko, who inspected the submerged farms on Wednesday, has called on the federal and state governments to come to the aid of the affected farmers. Ogbianko said that disaster struck just as the rice farms were ready for harvest. He described the loss as colossal and expects the farmers would seek immediate support from the federal government. The National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives is charging all levels of government to recruit more nurses and midwives if the nation must commit to the reduction of maternal and child mortality rates. The association also said the government should ensure employment of frontline healthcare workers if Nigeria is to avoid needless deaths of citizens. It has also called for holistic review of the task shifting and sharing policy documents, which members say leaves in the hands of skilled non-professionals tasks related to lives and mothers and children, thereby compromising their health. The International Monetary Fund has warned Nigeria to be cautious about the use of its foreign exchange reserves because oil prices could decline at any time. The nation's external reserves have been declining in recent months. The head, Emerging Economies Regional Studies, Anna Elia, warns that advanced economies' interest rate hikes were still at the early stages. She also said Nigeria should be cautious now as global external conditions remain challenging. Elia said a combination of factors has basically affected emerging markets. It started with sharp appreciation in dollar due to rising interest rates in the U.S. IMF says in Nigeria's case, one important driver that has always affected its economic condition is oil. Coming up, African stories. Zimbabwe faces worst economic crisis in a decade. And later, earthquake hits south of Kuri Island in Russia, where Hurricane Michael leaves a trail of destruction in America's east.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Madam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome back. This is CNN News and African Stories. Zimbabwe is plunging into its worst economic crisis in a decade. Prices are skyrocketing and gas lines are snaking for hours. The new government insists that the country has risen to middle-income status, but citizens don't seem to agree. In the days since the new finance minister announced the stabilization program, long lines for fuel reappeared, sometimes stretching for several kilometers. Drugs are also in short supply in a country where the health system has been long on the brink of collapse. Leading fast food chains in Zimbabwe have shut their doors as the cash crunch in the country worsens. Just 2 months after the president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, won elections, some restaurant branches in the capital, Harare, and the second largest city, Bulawayo, say they would remain closed until further notice. Last week, a Zimbabwean newspaper reported that many retail shops were running out of some essential goods because of foreign currency shortages. Tunisia's parliament has approved a law to criminalize racist speech and incitements to hatred in a move aimed at protecting the mainly Arab nation's black population. The head of the Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights, Saoud Romhani, says this is a very important turning point in the history of Tunisia, equivalent to the abolition of slavery. Romhani added, quote, "It is a giant step, but there's still a lot of work to be done to make this law a reality in a society where there is racism against the 10% of black Tunisians and sub-Saharan Africans who suffer from insults and sometimes violent attacks. A woman from Ivory Coast was assaulted after she responded to insults 3 months ago. Under the law, a person convicted of using racist language could be sentenced to a year in prison and fined about $350. The law was passed to the backing of 125 MPs, 1 voted against it and 5 abstained. An Egyptian military court has sentenced 4 militants to death in connection with the killing of 20 police officers. The court heard the accused were members of a branch of the Islamic State group and that they had been involved in a series of attacks last year. 16 other defendants were given life sentences. Hundreds of Egyptian policemen, soldiers and civilians have been killed in jihadi attacks in recent years. South African National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union says workers at the Social Security Agency, which provides welfare grants to millions of poor people, have begun a strike action on Wednesday. At least 17 million vulnerable people, or a third of the population in Africa's most industrialized economy, depend on the grants for survival, underscoring SASH's crucial role in maintaining social stability. The union's main goal of contention is the rollout of a biometric system for the beneficiaries, which it says has not been linked to new performance targets for its more than 8,000 members at the agency. The African Union has called for maximum restraint in Cameroon on Wednesday, following an opposition candidate's declaration of victory in the weekend's presidential election. Ahead of the official results, Maurice Kamto, a leading opposition challenger with the Movement for the Rebirth of Cameroon, declared himself winner of the Sunday elections. With tensions running high over the vote, African Union Commission Chairperson Moussa Faki called for both sides to avoid aggravating the situation. Faki says it was following developments closely and that any claim relating to the electoral process should be handled through the existing legal mechanisms. Sierra Leonean government says it has cancelled a $400 million contract to build a new airport with Chinese funding. The aviation minister, Kanibe Karlon, says the current airport would be renovated instead as a new facility was not necessary. The contract was signed by the previous president just a week before an election in March that kicked his party from power. The World Bank and IMF had opposed the deal at the time, saying Sierra Leone could ill afford such an ambitious project because it is heavily indebted already. When we return, magnitude 6.3 earthquake strikes south of Kuri Island in Russia, while Hurricane Michael batters Florida. And later, sport, Kano Pillars, Enugu Rangers in 2018 ITO Cup Finals.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand, just Malasa phone.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international scene, a magnitude 6.8 earthquake has shaken the south region of Kuril Island, southeastern Russia on Thursday. According to the U.S. Geographical Survey, there were no immediate tsunami warnings issued. The quake struck 177 kilometers south of Severo Kuril at a depth of 33 kilometers. There is no immediate report of damage or casualties. Official search and rescue efforts following the devastating earthquake and tsunami in Indonesia has been called off. That toll from the powerful 7.5 magnitude tremor and subsequent sea wave in late September stands at more than 2,000, with 680 people officially still missing. It is feared there could be as many as 5,000 still buried under rubble after large areas of Palu on Sulawesi Island were destroyed to the ground. Destructive Category 4 Hurricane Michael made landfall near the Mexico Beach in southeastern U.S. state of Florida on early Wednesday afternoon. With maximum sustained winds of 250 kilometers per hour, just shy of a Category 5 storm, Michael is the most powerful storm on record to hit Florida's Panhandle, a region rimmed with tourist beaches and fishing villages along the Gulf of Mexico. Meteorologists say the hurricane could push up to 4 meters of ocean waters onto the coast and drench many areas across southeastern United States with torrential rains. The National Weather Service says this is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation, noting that Michael grew from a tropical storm to a Category 4 hurricane in about 40 hours. As of Wednesday afternoon, nearly 200,000 Florida homes were without power. Keiko Fujimori, daughter of former Peruvian President Alberto Fujimori, has been arrested as part of an investigation into money laundering. Fujimori, who is leader of the opposition in the Peruvian Congress, was detained along with her husband. The judge ordered they be held initially for a day, along with 19 other suspects. Prosecutors allege Fujimori accepted illegal contributions to her party by a Brazilian firm. She has denied any wrongdoing. Malaysia's cabinet has agreed to do away with death penalty and halt pending executions, a move that has been hailed by international human rights groups and foreign diplomats. Law Minister Liu Vikyung says death penalty may be abolished. A proposed bill on abolishing capital punishment is likely to be discussed by the government when the Malaysian parliament meets on Monday. Up next, Kano Pillars and Enugu Rangers in 2018 ITU Cup Finals. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Super How MTN gives 2,000% bonus for reactivating your MTN SIM. That's right. If you haven't used your MTN SIM for 45 days or more, recharge now and get 2,000% bonus. That's right, 2,000% bonus for your first recharge of every month.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
There is a new all-news network on the scene in Nigeria to give news from a purely news perspective and to promote free information flow across Africa. Fresh views, unbiased, bold, with a purely African view. African News Network, ANN, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sports. This year's ATO Cup final will be played between Kano Pillars and Enugu Rangers after two dramatic semi-finals in Lagos and Kano on Wednesday. The final is scheduled for Sabah later this month, with the overall winners representing the country in next year's CAF Confederation Cup. Sierra Leone's African Cup of Nations qualifier against Ghana in Kumasi will not go ahead on Thursday after the country's Football Association failed to get suspension lifted. Sierra Leone's authorities, who had petitioned FIFA to get the ban lifted, did not meet a Tuesday deadline to reinstate ousted Football Association President Isha Johansson, who is accused of corruption by the government. That's ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.